Good morning, everybody. Apologies, or afternoon, I guess, depending on where you are. Apologies for being a few minutes late. A little technical difficulty this morning, but here now and hopping on into the IDP Plus Offseason Mailbag Show. I'm Justin Frye at JFriedP on X. As always, hop on the website, join the website, get on the Discord server. You can ask us questions as we approach draft season. Super helpful. You can pick people's brains on when you're on the clock, especially in any kind of slow draft. You can get real-time draft advice, really helpful. And we got a bunch of great content coming out. A lot of our tiers and rankings are starting to kick out. I know I've seen some linebacker and edge rusher tiers come out this week. So great content coming out. Go check it out. Ask me questions as we go. I'll get through as many as I can. It's always fun when you guys are interacting and we're chatting about your takes, my takes. So happy to do that as the questions come in. And if you have any over the course of the week, send them into mailbag at idpguys.org. Did not see anything come in. Just checked again still. So with that, we'll just kind of hop into some news. Unfortunately, the first thing, not something you ever want to have to talk about, but the biggest piece of news that dropped is the fourth round rookie cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings, Kyrie Jackson, and two of his high school teammates passed away over the weekend in a car accident. It's just horrible news. Thoughts are with the families of Kyrie Jackson as well as his high school teammates who all passed away in that accident. Yeah, just very sad. From all accounts, he was a heck of a human being, and just nothing you ever want to see. So, no easy way to transition from that, but some other news. We're apparently getting into the season where we'll see some suspensions. Cam Sutton, new cornerback for the Steelers, formerly of the Lions, was suspended 8 games for a personal conduct policy violation. He'll be back, I think it's right at the end of October. Tashawn Gibson, I believe, is still a free agent, formerly of the 49ers. Got a 6-game suspension for PEDs. They left the door open for him coming back, but with their recent investments in the safety position, I wouldn't be surprised if he does not return, or if he does, that it's after his suspension is served, which I believe he can do. Let's see. What other news was there? John Johnson agreed to terms with the Rams, giving them a fun defensive back or safety room between him and Cameron Curl, who came over on a big deal this offseason. That whole defense is going to be pretty interesting to try to stat out and figure out who to take, where the values are. So excited he's back there in Los Angeles. And the last one is just a minor thing, but Josh Allen announced today that he is now going by Joshua Hines Allen. And if you're at all interested in why, there's a pretty cool video he dropped on X this morning. I'm sure if you look it up, you can go find it. That's all that I have down for news. With that, we'll talk a little bit about Trophy Smack. So it's draft season, folks. Get ahead of the game right now with Trophy Smack's gorgeous draft boards, complete with player stickers, so deep you couldn't possibly need all of them. And for the first time, Trophy Smack has IDP expansion pack for all of us defensive nerds. Check it out in the link in the show notes and get yours today. With that, we'll hop on back and chat about start off Last week we went through the AFC, some news and notes from some of the teams. This week we're going to start in the NFC, just like I did last week. We'll go alphabetical. So that kicks us off with the Cardinals. And by all accounts for Arizona, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the real deal. I'm sure you didn't really need to know that. All the buzz about him has been fantastic. Really excited to see what he can do. I do think he is getting overdrafted in redraft. I think he's a borderline round 1 pick in single quarterback leagues, which is just wild. The season he'd have to return value, getting picked that highly. I get it. A lot of the people picking this early probably play quite a bit of Dynasty, and it's that Dynasty to redraft brain is struggle is real. But there's almost no chance I'm picking him at that price. The amount of upside of hitting on him, picking him at the back end of the first, beginning of the second, versus the amount of downside it's just, I'm not touching him. I saw some news too that reports coming out. Basically, Trey Benson is primed to be the backup. James Conner is going to be the starter again this year, and I'm inclined to believe that. I do believe that Benson is there for a backup to Conner, who has been known to get hurt quite often, as well as he's the future of the position for 2025 and beyond. Let me see what else. Seems like everyone's kind of sleeping on Kaiser White again. I know he got hurt partway through the year last year, but he was having a good season before that. And realistically, it's kind of Kaiser White, Mac Wilson, who they brought in from the Patriots this offseason, and neither of them are getting picked all that highly. And I expect both to play quite a bit in 2 linebacker sets for them. So I'm excited to draft both of them in redraft. Less so redraft, more dynasty. Darius Robinson, great fit in that scheme. I'm excited to see kind of how they utilize him. Got some inside-out versatility, can move around the line. My other question is mostly, I was high on BJ Ojolari. I know Dynasty Santa was high on Ojolari last year. Will he be able to emerge and get some more playing time in year 2? Because he had one of the more promising win rates, pass rush win rates among rookies last year. So he's an intriguing name to see if he can get his snap count up enough to really make an impact in the coming season. Because if it stays down where they were rotating through so many edge rushers last year, if they do that again, no one's going to really have much value. And I'd like to see them kind of narrow it down to 3 or 4 at most, playing quite a bit. So you can kind of see how talented Robinson and Ojolari are, and if they are pieces they can build with long term. Because if not, next year's draft is going to be a fantastic draft to need edge rushers for. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on with the Cardinals this offseason. After the Cardinals, we hit on the Falcons. I'm excited for Atlanta's offense in general. Apologies, I'm a little sniffly. I got my toddler brought home a cold, so that's always a lot of fun for anyone who has little kids. But I'm excited for the whole offense. It'll be interesting to see if Cousins can bounce back. I brought up my takes on Penix before, but if you still haven't had your rookie drafts, he's going way too late for a quarterback being drafted who was drafted in the top 10 of the NFL draft. I get people are worried, when will he play? When will he get on the field? But there's not a ton of history to suggest that any quarterback being drafted in the top 10 is going to sit multiple years in the current landscape of the NFL. The Falcons would have to really deliver big time, I think, for them to be able to take that heat with keeping Cousins in. And realistically, they have an out on Cousins after a couple of years. So if he's not the same player he was prior to the injury, if he doesn't connect well, which does not appear at all to be the case. He's taken all the snaps this offseason pretty much with the ones down there. And there's been buzz about Bijan, about Pitts, and about London. And I think all three are going to have huge roles in the offense, as well as Darnell Mooney, who's still being slept on and should be a lock for the second receiver option there. So I think he's going way too late in drafts right now for a guy who, if he's back to what he was a couple of years ago, he came off the injury, I think, last year and struggled a little bit. Plus, they had DJ Moore there. So I think he will do better in that second fiddle role. If you want a comparison, think about what Jordan Addison did with Kirk Cousins. You still had a reasonably good season from Hawkinson, from Jefferson. So that's kind of your comps for London and for Pitts. I mean, they didn't have the running back that Bijan is who they can dump it off to, but I do think there is opportunity for Darnell Mooney to be that deep threat, big play guy in that offense who can, I mean, what? He put up 10 touchdowns last year, I think Addison did. So I'm excited for Mooney. I think he's, like I said, he's going to be a fun later round pick, in my opinion, who's going to outperform that and be probably a decent flex option for you, especially if one of the guys in front of him goes down. But you're here to listen to more about defense. So the Falcons have been talking up Richie Grant and talking about how, while they benched him at the end of last year, that was a different regime. And the coaching staff went back and looked and basically has come out and said, one, we were wrong about you. We didn't think you were going to be as good as you are. And two, they miscast you last year, and we're going to get you back into a role in the box near the line of scrimmage. So I'm curious to see what that looks like come training camp, because if he truly can get back to the box heavy role he played in 2022, he's going way too late in drafts right now, and is being undervalued drastically in Dynasty as well, because that's a role he can excel in. He's put up 100 tackles, I think, each of his for the last couple seasons. So I'm excited to see if they can get Richie Grant back into that big time tackle role, playing up in the box. I'm also the other big question I really have there. I haven't heard a ton of buzz on Troy Anderson. I believe they drafted, I always get these two confused. I think they drafted J.D. Bertrand between him and Eichenberg. I can't remember. One's in Las Vegas, one's in Atlanta. I think it's Bertrand is in Atlanta. And I really like him as a player. And to be honest, either of them have a decent shot to get a good role if given the opportunity. Caden Ellis is locked in as the primary linebacker. And everyone likes to make a big deal about Ernest Jones being the only one on the field for the Rams, but I think that was said more about their personnel than anything else. They didn't really have a strong second linebacker when Bobby Wagner and Ernest Jones were in Los Angeles. I think Jones was playing around 70-75% of snaps while Wagner was a full-time player. So if they have two good linebackers, I think they're going to play them. So either Anderson or Nate Landman is back as well, or the rookie. I think you're going to see someone emerge next to Caden Ellis, and whoever that is going to be probably a decent third linebacker on a roster for IDP purposes. Hop on down to the Panthers. That whole team just had a massive facelift, I feel like. The offseason, trying to, one, figure out how best to help Bryce Young. And, I mean, the biggest piece they did for that was going and getting Deontay Johnson. He is the perfect pairing, in my opinion, for Young. I think Young struggled last year when his receivers weren't getting open, because obviously he had Mechie and Jamison Williams in college at Alabama, who got open very, very well. All over the field. And last year, I think the Panthers, Adam Thielen, I think, was the best at getting open. He was like the 90th best receiver in the NFL per, I think it was like NFL or Next Gen Stats, had him like 96th among wide receivers in open score. So I'm excited for Deontay. I think I brought this up before, as I'm not a big betting guy, but I think he's kind of a sneaky guy to lead the NFL in targets. I think he's a decent bet, honestly, to finish in the top 5. Great PPR target, especially with how late he's going. I'm not sure why he's going later than he was last year. I guess it's maybe people are afraid of Bryce Young, but I do think Bryce Young bounces back. With the new head coach there, Canales, he fixed Geno Smith a couple of years ago. He fixed Baker Mayfield last year. Those are both quarterbacks who are at least when Canales joined them weren't as highly touted as Bryce Young. So I do think there's a reasonable shot, especially they invested at both guard spots. They're trying to keep him clean in the pocket, let him trust his offensive line in front of him, fix him looking down at the line and worrying about, am I going to be able to stay upright? And he can get it to his options. Brooks, whenever he comes back, is going to be a fun dump off for him. But on the defensive side of the ball, I'm excited for DJ Wanham to leave Minnesota and actually get some good playing time in Carolina. He's a good bet this year in redraft leagues to outproduce where he's going to go, because I don't think he's going to get drafted as a top, probably not even a top 30 edge. And I could easily see him finishing in the top 24. He sees a decent snap share there. He's posted decent sack numbers and limited snaps with the Vikings. The other one I'm really excited for is the linebacker position there. You guys know from if you were here during the offseason or earlier in the offseason, we were talking rookies, that I'm very high on Trevin Wallace. I don't think he's going to play a ton this year. Shaq Thompson appears to be healthy, and they went out and signed Josie Jewell. I think those are the 2 starting linebackers for them to start the year at least, and while Trevin develops behind the scenes a little bit. But I mean, obviously Thompson missed most of last year with, I think it was a broken ankle. And Jewell's never been a picture of health for the Broncos. So there's a reasonable shot Wallace gets on the field. But Shaq Thompson is going to have a huge year in my mind, coming back off that injury. And I think Jewell is going to wind up wearing the green dot. So it'll be interesting to see those 2 linebackers. I think in general the Carolina defense is being a little undervalued as well for a team that struggled last year. People are discounting the offense, but they're somehow also discounting the defense a little bit. And if the offense is bad, the defense has to be on the field more. So I just don't understand that. And I think just it's the stink of being a bad team. People are afraid of it. But if they're going to be a bad team again, then their linebackers are going to be put in situations where they have to make a lot of tackles because they're going to be behind, and you're going to see running games featured heavily against them. So I guess I just don't understand why Thompson and Jewell aren't being talked more about. And I mean, even in Dynasty, Thompson said he wants to play like 5 more years, and he's the type of athlete that can do something like that. So I'm excited for the Panthers for IDP purposes this year. Next up, we get the Bears. And there's not a ton on them. Obviously, Caleb Williams is going to be interesting. Coming off the board fairly early. I'm not sure. I think Jaden Daniels is still behind him, which is a weird one to me. I'd rather have Daniels at cost, but I do like Williams quite a bit, and I do think he can finish as a back-end quarterback 1 type. But is he really all that different this year from a Jared Goff or a Brock Purdy or someone? Probably not. Let's see. Austin Booker, I'm excited for. They traded up into the 5th round, came back into the draft to make sure they got him. That defense, that defensive line, there's opportunities to be won opposite Montez Sweat. So he's a guy I'm keeping an eye on if he can get on the field. He drew some comps to Max Crosby, which is a big comp to make. But his new D-line coach coached Crosby in probably not in Vegas, sorry, in Oakland before they moved, I believe. But for his D-line coach to make that comparison says something about Booker. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, Max Crosby, say this in a nice way, is a little crazy, and he plays just so many snaps. So something like that is harder to project, but I do think Booker should be a guy to keep in mind. And then Kyler Gordon, I'm excited for. He has some solid upside to be a potential cornerback one for anyone who plays in leagues where you have to start a cornerback. And I think there's a decent shot at it. But he's got that slot role locked down. He gets targeted on a decent number of his coverages. So coming out, I saw some comps from people to Kenny Moore, and I do think there's an opportunity if the defense wants to play him that way. Now that the defense is getting a little better in Chicago, that they can kind of get a little more creative and let him play in that kind of a role. So. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Gordon, but I do think he's a good bet if you wait on cornerback and don't want to draft one of the quote top guys. I think he's a decent bet to be a cornerback one-ish type player. The Cowboys. The Cowboys, I'm excited. We'll start with Brandon Cooks. I'm excited for what he could do this year on offense. There's been a lot of talk about the rapport him and Dak have in year two. I think that's an interesting late-round guy, a receiver as well. And he's got the track record of putting up 1,000-yard seasons like everywhere he's been. So I wouldn't be surprised if he bounces back from a little bit of a down year last year. Playing next to Lamb and Ferguson should be a decent third option, and they don't have any running backs really, so they're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. A little bit, we'll talk about Marshawn Nealon versus Sam Williams. I like Nealon quite a bit, but maybe Sam Williams can finally make the jump everyone was hoping for last year and become that player that Dallas needs, opposite of Micah Parsons. If not, Nealon should at least see an opportunity to get some snaps, get on the field a little bit, and show off. I think he had one of the best three-cone times from any edge in draft history. If I remember right, it's been a little bit, but I remember he had a very, very good three-cone drill. So his agility is extremely interesting for a pass rusher. The other big thing with the Cowboys I'm interested to see is how the linebacker room plays out. They signed Eric Kendricks. He should be the starter there, but what are they going to do behind him, next to him? Originally, there was a report that basically was saying Demario Overshown, when he comes back to play the strong side, Damone Clark will play the weak side. And at the time, I was like, okay, Damone Clark's going to be a pretty good player playing nearly a full-time role still, and Overshown won't have much of a role. But there's recently been a report that the Cowboys are considering Overshown as a three-down player, which would mean he'd be playing the weak side. And I don't know that Clark is even a great fit in a strong side role. He might be the backup behind him. So that's a battle I'm looking forward to in camp between Clark and Overshown, and I'm excited to see who can win that. And whoever it is should have a decent year for fantasy. So keep that battle on your radar as we get into training camps here at the end of the month, because those Cowboys linebackers last year, they were all over the place and hard to project week to week. So if ideally we can get someone locked into a full-time role and just next to Kendricks, know who our two starters are and kind of be a little more stable than they were last year for us. Next up, we'll hit on the Lions. Let me see. The Lions, talk about Jameson Williams getting a real shot. I'm excited for him to finally see what he could do. I do think he's worth a shot in the late single digits, maybe the 9th to 10th round. I'm not sure I can take it much higher than that because people with easier paths to targets in that range above that. So if you believe in Jahmyr Gibbs and you believe in Sam Laporta and you believe in Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's kind of hard to get Jameson Williams enough targets to have a good fantasy season. He could be a good NFL receiver, helping get those guys open because you have to account for him with a safety over the top. But I don't know what his role is really going to be for fantasy week to week, but he's probably a decent flex option if you're looking for that high upside, catch 2 passes for 100 and something yards and 2 touchdowns or something. Let's see. It looks like Jack Campbell is getting prepped for that starting role next to Anzalone. They didn't lose any of their linebackers, but at the same time, this offseason, they've been putting Campbell more and more with the ones. So I'm excited to see. I know some talk about him being a bit of a bust just because he didn't play a ton as a rookie and kind of had to earn it. But that's the thing with players getting drafted to good teams is they don't have to rush their rookies in. Let them learn, let them take over, and let Jack Campbell just be unlocked in year 2 after sitting and learning behind some decent linebackers in front of him and learning how to be a professional athlete. And then the other thing I'm kind of excited for is what's going to happen. Last year, a lot of people were pumping up James Houston after he put up 8 sacks down the stretch, but he barely was playing at the end of 2022. So then he missed most of last year, and they picked a rookie, Josh Pascal, out of Kentucky in the 2023 draft, who didn't have a ton of impact last year either. So maybe one of those two can kind of step up next to or across from Aiden Hutchinson, and they've got a really solid defensive line. With I think they sign either Reader or BJ Hill to pair with Alim McNeil and have a like I said, really good defensive line that'll keep their linebackers clean with a couple big guys in the middle. So should be a really good defense in Detroit. And then obviously they got some rookie cornerbacks that are going to play quite a bit, it sounds like. Next up, we'll hit on the Packers. I'm curious to see how they deploy their linebackers this coming year. They've been a 3-4 team. Their new coordinator is coming in from Boston College. So they talked a little bit about Quay Walker potentially moving a little more to the edge versus playing off the line. So I'm intrigued to see how they use him in the preseason, if they're really going to let him rush the passer more across from Rashawn Gary, or, I mean, they still have Lucas Van Ness there. They picked last year who didn't get to play a ton. They still have Smith there opposite Gary. Like, this team's going to be interesting to see how they deploy their players. And I do think Isaiah McDuffie, at least to start the year, is going to hold down the starting inside linebacker role there while they wait for Cooper to take over partway through the season. So I'm intrigued by that linebacker room. Like I've said, I'm selling Quay, especially with Cooper there now. You're probably not getting the return you would have gotten prior to the draft, unfortunately, but I would still be willing to listen on him and try to get a good offer as a former first-round linebacker. And then last note I have here, I was intrigued. The Packers drafted 3 safeties in this draft after signing Xavier McKinney. So they recognized that they had a needed safety, and their safety struggled last year. McKinney's a good deep safety, so whoever they drafted was going to be an interesting name for IDP managers. And then they drafted Javon Bullard, who I also thought would have been a better free safety. So maybe they're planning to play too high, but it wouldn't surprise me if Bullard and McKinney each play enough in the slot or the box to kind of matter a little bit. Especially the note that I really have here is all the beat writers were saying he basically played exclusively at the safety position in the offseason, which I found interesting because I thought when they picked the other two that maybe they were going to play him at slot cornerback and play one of the other guys at the safety position, and you might have 2 rookie DBs on the Packers that have enough opportunity to matter for fantasy. But it sounds like, at least to start the year, Javon Bullard is going to be the starting safety once he takes over that role, because he has been running with the 2s, not with the 1s. But I do think that happens in the preseason. But it should be Bullard next to Xavier McKinney. And the last team on the first half of this list that I have is the LA Rams. I'm excited. Jared Verse, if you haven't been listening to me for very long, he was my favorite edge coming into the draft. I loved the landing spot in the Rams, and I actually think if I were to be placing any bets on a defensive rookie of the year, I'm not sure what his odds are. I doubt they're the highest. He's one that I would be intrigued by because the way the Rams talk about him is very interesting. Basically, they recognize that since they haven't had a first-round pick in a while, then he walks in the building, they're like, that guy he looks different than some of the other guys, and they already are talking about how he stepped up and been a leader along that defensive line, even as a rookie. So I'm interested to see what he can do there, and he's a decent bet to probably hit close to double-digit sacks as a rookie, and just ascend in value for anyone who is willing to pick him in rookie drafts. And I do think he's a decent bet even in seasonal leagues because he does have a decent floor. He's got the size to be a run stopper as well as a pass rusher. My other notes are all on offense. I brought this up before, but I'm not worried about Kyren Williams. Blake Corum is his backup. They do a lot of the same things. That's true. But I would be surprised if it's anything other than probably a, 65-35, 70-30 split. I think Kyron's the starter, and he posted nearly 20 touches a game even when he played less than 70% of snaps last year. So I think the pick of Corum is a couple years into the future, and he was a good value where they got him, as well as last year when Kyron got hurt, they didn't have anyone. They were signing guys off the street. So of course they're going to invest and get a better player in there, and it cost them a 3rd-round pick. Yeah. You know who else cost 3rd-round picks the year before? Guys like Tank Bigsby, who was getting hyped up last offseason. Just because the coaches talk about him and everything doesn't mean anything, especially when they have a good player in front of them. I wouldn't worry too much about Kyron, at least not in 2024. Lastly, if anyone forgot, I believe Tyler Higbee got hurt in their last game in the playoffs, and the Rams went out and spent a decent chunk of change on Colby Parkinson this offseason. So if you're playing in a league like the Scott Fish Bowl or a deeper league where you're looking for some tight end depth, at the very least to start the season, Colby Parkinson is an interesting name. You could probably get Parkinson and Higbee together in later rounds and have decent upside because, McVay was talking him up, and with the money they paid him, he almost has to be the starter. He was a good blocker in Seattle, and I thought on film in college he was a decent pass catcher too, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him play that full-time Higbee role for the first probably 2 months of the season and be a pretty good player. So I'm excited for that. Let's see. With that, we'll hop over and we'll talk about IDP Plus Invitational. Can't really argue with fantasy football for a good cause. Last year, we had a record number of participants in the IDP Plus Autism Awareness Invitational, and this year we are thrilled to be partnering with the amazing people over at fantasycares.org, as well as Scott Fish, to support the Eagles Autism Foundation. We are accepting applications now through mid-July, coming right up, so get ahead of the crowd and get your name in the hat. Links to join and donate to the Eagles Autism Foundation are in the show description. With that, we will hop on to the next team, which is the Minnesota Vikings. Let me see. I'm very intrigued. This is another team that I'm interested to see what they look like in the preseason. Was their 3 safety alignment a result of not trusting 2 linebackers to play together? Because Josh Metellus' role was interesting, but I do think there's been talk of between spending money on Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace getting opportunities to wear the green dot. It seems like they're cross-training everyone enough so that defense is going to be pretty multiple. So I'm curious if Metellus kind of plays slot cornerback for them while Cashman and Pace both stay on the field. They can move. They signed Andrew Van Ginkel from the Dolphins. He can move around and play off the ball, on the ball. And I'm guessing with why am I blanking on his name? Their defensive coordinator up there, Brian Flores, being a Belichick disciple, that you're not going to see much in the preseason. So Jonathan Grenard is in there to take over for Danielle Hunter. So he's probably their top edge this year. And it wouldn't surprise me if kind of Turner and Van Ginkel rotate and neither of them play enough to really impact you for IDP. With the money they gave Cashman, my expectation is he's the full-time linebacker taking over for Jordan Hicks. But it wouldn't shock me if Pace plays 70 to 80% of snaps as well next to him. Cashman can drop in coverage pretty well, and Pace can rush the quarterback. So they kind of have differing skill sets. So I do think that the two of them could play well off of each other. And then, like I said, can Metellus be that guy, Josh Metellus be that guy again? And what are they doing with their other DBs? Bynum was really good last year. Harrison Smith, he's getting up there, but he's back for another year. It'll be interesting to see what that defense kind of looks like in 2024. But it should be a pretty good one again. Next up, we'll hop on down and talk about the Saints. Sorry again. On offense, I'm excited. They brought in the Clint Kubiak from the 49ers. So I'll be interested to see what he can do to help turn around that offense. I think that offense is undervalued. I think Derek Carr is due for a really good year. I'll probably be back to a borderline quarterback 1 in normal leagues. Olave might actually get some underneath routes, not just the deeper routes that he's been getting. Same with Shaheed, hopefully. Those two should be the top 2 there. Kamara and Kendre Miller should get decent opportunities. Juwan Johnson's been hurt, and they've been talking up Taysom Hill. And the talk out of their offseason program was that he's kind of moving all over, getting touches as a running back, as a tight end, split out wide. So it'll be interesting to see how. I kind of think they're going to use him similar to how Shanahan uses Juszczyk, but it'll be interesting to see if they put more roles even beyond that onto Hill's plate. Then the other thing of note, they haven't added a ton on defense, but they brought over Willie Gay from KC, and he seems to be kind of getting more opportunity at the expense of Pete Werner. It sounds like Gay is going to be the linebacker too, at least out of offseason program, but obviously that's without pads, so it'll be interesting to see. But I do think Gay is probably a better player than Werner at this point. And Demario Davis is still getting up there. So at some point, they're going to have to find someone to be that guy. So if you have the shot to take a cheap shot on Willie Gay, I don't hate doing that. And hoping maybe Demario Davis retires this offseason in Dynasty. Maybe you have Willie Gay as a linebacker one, taking over as the leader of that defense going forward. So just thought that was an interesting note there. Next up, we get the Giants. I'm excited for the Giants defense, especially their defensive line. But as I've talked about repeatedly, I do still believe that Kayvon Thibodeau is a sell. His metrics do not look great. His pass rush win rate is super low despite the high sack total last year. He's someone I'm willing to get off of and try to pivot into someone, even if they're lesser value, who has shown better on the field. Even if it's an older player or you trade away for a rookie. I don't think it's wild that you could get maybe one of the big three rookies for Thibodeau. I'm excited to see what Daniel Jones can do back in the Dayball system with an actually good wide receiver in Neighbors. And hopefully a better offensive line. They went out and signed a bunch of veterans to try to help the young guys learn and hopefully put together a good enough offensive line to keep Jones upright long enough to throw the ball to his weapons. So I expect a big season from Neighbors. There's no one else there. You could see a very Garrett Wilson-esque season from the last 2 years with a high number of targets. And I don't think the comps to Odell Beckham are all that crazy for what Neighbors can do. Just catching a slant, taking it to the house, something like that. Like I saw a lot of that just beyond helmet scouting when watching Neighbors play. It sounds like Tyler Nubin is going to be the one of the starting safeties for them, hopefully in the box, but that's still kind of TBD. He's someone I'm willing to take a shot on though. And then it sounds like they're going to go more to a one linebacker full-time system versus Micah McFadden playing quite a bit last year. So I think Okereke is in for a huge year. And unfortunately, I think Micah McFadden's going to lose out on a decent bit of playing time and not really be all that fantasy relevant, except in deeper leagues this coming season. Let's see. After that, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles are going to be pretty interesting just from a defensive line standpoint, kind of talking through who could be the guys. Obviously, Jalen Carter just showed out quite a bit as a rookie. Hopefully he can get some more playing time there. And I fully expect him to see an uptick in snaps. But at edge, I mean, they brought back Brandon Graham. They drafted Nolan Smith at the end of the first round last year, and then they went out and paid quite a bit of money to sign Bryce Huff. So I think Smith's price is still a little low. But, I mean, Huff I like him. I'm in on him this year. I think he's a really good bet, especially in a seasonal league, to take a shot on as a third edge rusher, just in case, he can prove that he can tackle at a decent enough clip that they let him play a full-time role. But if not, Nolan Smith's there to take over that role. And if not, if Huff does do well, then it wouldn't shock me if Smith takes over as a starter on the other side next year when their other guys are all kind of aging out. So Josh Sweat's the other one. Not Brandon Graham, sorry. Josh Sweat. And then, the other interesting spot for me is talking about their linebackers. So from all camp report or offseason reports for the Eagles, it sounds like Devin White is going to be given a shot to be the top guy there. Just a little bit surprising. I still like Nakobe Dean most on that group, but that's from a real life perspective. For fantasy, it does not sound like he's even going to start right now, which is just wild to me. Devin White was one of the two starting linebackers, and the other one is actually Zach Bond coming over from New Orleans. He was playing mostly edge. I think he played collegiately, if I remember right. It's been a while, at Ohio State, and was a pretty good linebacker for them, kind of a hybrid pass rusher / linebacker. The Saints wanted to play him rushing off the edge, and he kind of struggled with that. So it'll be interesting to see in the Vic Fangio scheme if he can kind of be that pretty good linebacker, can blitz. Devin White can blitz. I'm kind of confused which one's going to drop in coverage because that has never been a strength of White's. So honestly, if Bond proves he can do it, he might be the top linebacker on that team, which is just kind of crazy because I feel like nobody is talking about Zach Bond right now. I do. I like Nakobe Dean, and I want to believe in Nakobe Dean, but when it's a bunch of different beat writers all saying the same thing and talking this guy up, it's hard not to believe it. And honestly, right now the price is so low that it's worth the shot. And I don't see that price climbing dramatically. So I feel like at price he's a good bet because I mean a lot of the guys he's going around are not even starters. I feel like so. At the very least, he's got more of an opportunity than a lot of them. So I do believe the hype a little bit. Let me see. Next up, we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers, who are another team that there's it's not a ton to talk about with them. Their defense is fairly set. I'm excited to see Leonard Floyd opposite of Bosa this year and see what he can do. He's posted pretty good numbers the last few years, and I do think he's kind of a sneaky later round guy that you can get if you're looking for some pass rush help. People always want to overdraft the young guys, and the old reliable veterans kind of slip through the cracks just because they change teams a bunch. So I wouldn't be surprised if he posts another strong season out in San Francisco, especially with all the attention that some of their other players get. I haven't seen much on Dre Greenlaw. Devondre Campbell should be starting until Greenlaw is healthy enough to get back, but I wouldn't expect that early in the year. He's coming off an Achilles injury in the Super Bowl. So I'm not touching Greenlaw in redraft this year. And the other piece, so they took Malik Mustafa in the 4th round, who is a safety that Joe Harlow and I liked quite a bit. But unfortunately, he's kind of buried this year. However, Fanga is on the final year of his rookie deal, so wouldn't surprise me if they let him walk rather than paying him a ton of money, especially with Purdy's deal coming up for an extension pretty soon. They have to most likely extend Brandon Ayuk, and they're already pushing up against the cap next year. So to the fact that they're probably going to have to get rid of Deebo Samuel. So either that or keep Deebo and let Ayuk walk. But I would be shocked if both receivers stay. And with that, I also don't think they have the money to keep Hufanga, especially if the market's going to bear out what McKinney got, $17 million a year, I think it was. So yeah, I'm willing to place a bet on Hufanga because he's not that much or not that expensive right now in dynasty leagues. Let me see. Got a couple teams left. Talk next about the Seattle Seahawks, who are due for, in my mind, a big bounce back year. So much of their issue last year was the fact that their offensive line was not healthy and didn't. I mean, when it was, they didn't block all that well. But I expect Gino to have a huge bounce back year, be closer to what he was, I guess, in 2022 than 2021. I think he could be a pretty solid back end quarterback one. I don't think he's being drafted that way at all right now. Everyone kind of just wrote it off as a 1 year thing now. But by bringing in Grubb from Washington, that system is pretty quarterback friendly, and putting Jackson Smith-Jigba in a better role than just throwing him screens like they did last year should really help that offense. And I think DK Metcalf and JSN should both have pretty good seasons as well this year. I'm intrigued by Jerome Baker and Terrell Dodson as their new linebackers. I thought they might spend a little money to go get a higher caliber one, but they had money set aside for Jordan Brooks, and Brooks got the offer from Miami and pounced on it. So they were not expecting that to happen. So I'm kind of curious what they do with Baker and Dodson. But Tyrese Knight is an interesting stash. I think they're going to play him, they said, outside a little bit this year, and then he'll probably kick inside because I believe both Baker and Dodson are on 1 year deals. So Knight was a 4th-round pick. He's a super athletic linebacker that should be due for a decent role in 2025 with I think he's a 4th-round pick this year. The last question I really have is what happens with Boy Mafe this season? I do think his breakout last year was real, and I know their D coordinator or their new coach McDonald is good at putting his guys in positions to excel. So I do think he should have another solid season this coming year. Let me see. Second to last team, talk about the Tampa Bay Bucks. And we'll start with one of the deep sleepers at linebacker this year that no one seems to be acknowledging. By the end of last year, Devin White was on the bench in the playoffs, and KJ Britt was starting. I think because it kind of happened mostly after the season when Britt got the fantasy season, when Britt got promoted to a full-time role, his ADP is not caught up. It seems like no one's thinking about him as being the second linebacker there. Servassier Dennis made some plays again in the offseason, but I think Britt has the inside track to being the starter next to Levante David this year. Maybe Dennis can ascend and play with Britt next year, but if you're looking for another late round linebacker that you can kind of grab, he's been on waivers in quite a few of my dynasty leagues. He's a great stash and could easily eclipse 100 tackles this year and put up a solid fantasy season for you for your IDP squads. The other one I want to talk about is Tyke Smith. I'm not really sure why he's kind of gone under the radar for IDP, especially in dynasty leagues, but he's also not getting picked much. The coaches are all kind of talking him up a ton. Yes, they brought back Jordan Whitehead to start in the box next to Winfield, but Smith might wind up being their starting slot cornerback in Tampa because basically they've said, this guy's so good, we want to try to find a way to get him on the field as a rookie. So whether it's as a safety next to Winfield or in the slot. I feel like he's going to earn enough of a role to be worth holding on to for the coming season and potentially having a good role the following year. I think Whitehead signed a 2-year deal, but at the same time, they've got a bunch of guys coming up for contracts, and my guess is there's probably not a ton of guaranteed money on the second year, so he could easily take over the starting safety role next to Winfield, who likes to play deep, so he would be the box guy as early as 2025. And the last team I'm going to hit on is the Washington Commanders. Something I haven't seen a ton of reporting on. So Johnny Newton had a Jones fracture in I forget which foot. That's why he missed part of last year and had surgery and missed some of the run up to the draft. Well, apparently he was spotted in offseason on the sideline in a boot on the other foot because he had another Jones fracture on the other foot. So it's officially a red flag for me. Poor luck. I'm not an injury person, but bigger players like defensive linemen who have foot issues, I don't know that that's someone I really want to invest in. So I was a little worried when I started studying out the Commanders about how much he was going to play and kind of take away from their veteran defensive tackles. I don't see that as a big concern, so I'm not super worried about either of their DTs at this point. They should play quite a bit because they're the two best defensive linemen on that team. Let me see. Jeremy Chin came over from Carolina, and I think he's getting set to kind of be their starting strong safety and play a decent box role again, finally, after I don't know what he did in Carolina to wear out his welcome there, but hopefully he can bounce back and kind of be that player that he was his rookie year. Then the last thing, I don't actually have it on here, but I've hyped up a little bit. Dorrance Armstrong, the edge in Washington, should see quite a few snaps as their best edge rusher. And I'm excited for what should be a very solid season from him. Similar to DJ Wanham, he should have a pretty good year coming over with Quinn from Dallas. I'm interested to see what he can do in that full-time role there. Chargers interior D-line. I have not done the Chargers yet, so I apologize. Just a second. So I have not gotten to them to really stat them out. But at the same time, I can pull up some stuff and try to get you an answer, a better answer than what I have. Because they do have some, I mean, Poona Ford and Morgan Fox, I guess, are the guys that I'm most interested in there. There's not a ton of names there, to be honest. I'm not sure where the value's really going to come from, unfortunately. I think Fox had a decent year last year, if I recall. And Ford's someone I think Joe and I have talked about before. But sorry, that's probably not a great answer, but I'm not sure either of them are going to get picked super highly. So hopefully, I think I'd take a shot on Ford of the two. But they both should be pretty deep names. that was kind of what I had for this week. Like I said, we started having our tiers articles coming out this week for redraft for IDPs. So I believe Dynasty Santa wrote a linebacker article that came out. I think it might have been last week. But I know Joe's Edge article came out this morning, so go check that out. And then we've got some more stuff coming out later on in the week. And as always, if you have any questions, shoot them over to me, mailbag at idp.org. Shoot it to me on X. You can find me there at jfrydp. Sign up for our newsletter. Michael Sicoli has a ton of great content he puts in there, especially as we reach training camp. All sorts of blurbs from different people, get all sorts of great content from him. So definitely sign up for that. It's a great tool as we get into camp and you get some more news kind of from the teams, what they're planning to do, as well as go to idpguys.org and get signed up, get our rankings, our articles. We got a snap count tool over there, the Discord server, all sorts of great resources, get access to our writers. And seeing no other questions, we will wrap it up. Thanks everyone for hopping in. Apologies again for being a couple minutes late. Hope you have had a good 4th and have a great week. Talk to you guys next week.